Ladies and gentlemen, yesterday afternoon, the U.S. Supreme Court issued a brand new bombshell ruling that pretty much just ended the woke agenda altogether. And no, I'm not kidding. But before we get to the ruling itself, I need to give you guys some background information. You see, in February of 2025, Republican House Representative in the state of Maine, Laurel Libby, made a post on Facebook which condemned Maine's tolerance of trans athletes in female sports, which said the following. This is an issue that is pertinent to all Mainers, but especially to Maine girls who should be able to expect a level playing field, and right now, they don't have that. It's absolutely unfair to female athletes who work hard every single day to compete in their respective sports and who have to compete against male athletes. Now, to all of us intelligent, reasonable people, what she had to say isn't even controversial in the slightest. However, if you're a member of the incompetent progressive left, this Facebook post pretty much threatens your entire worldview. You see, because of her Facebook post, the Maine House of Representatives actually voted to censor her, silencing her and preventing her from speaking inside of the congressional chambers. Now, in response, Representative Laurel Libby claimed that her First Amendment rights had been violated, and they had, and so the issue ended up working its way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and so folks, as of yesterday afternoon, the U.S. Supreme Court has officially issued a 7-2 ruling agreeing with Representative Laurel Libby that her First Amendment right to free speech has, in fact, been violated by Maine's House of Representatives. So now, the verdict is officially in. Members of the radically progressive woke left don't get to silence their political opposition anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, as of yesterday afternoon, those days are officially over. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot more to talk about here, but before we do, I want to say real quick that if you guys enjoy the daily news updates, please consider subscribing to the channel because it actually really does help a ton. But okay, check this out. Worth making note of, the two U.S. Supreme Court justices that voted against Representative Laurel Libby's First Amendment right to free speech were none other than Justice Sonia Sotomayor and Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, both of whom are radically progressive, far-left extremists. Folks, if these two Supreme Court justices had their way with the country, very clearly speaking out against the radically progressive woke agenda would land you inside of a prison cell. Really, this entire situation is just yet another example of the progressive left's never-ending mission to silence and criminally punish anyone that dares to speak out against their radically progressive agenda. Very clearly, the radical progressives don't actually care about the rights that are afforded to all of us in the U.S. Constitution. No, to them, the Constitution is nothing more than a tool that can be weaponized and used against their enemies whenever possible, or ignored altogether whenever it gets in the way of their radically progressive agenda. They couldn't care less about your constitutionally protected rights. To them, all that matters is power. And so the truth is, this Supreme Court ruling is really a resounding victory for free speech across the country, affirming that the government can't silence their opposition for simply speaking the truth. But of course, as you all already know, this attack on Representative Laurel Libby's right to free speech was really a calculated move by the Democrats to suppress conservative voices from challenging their radically progressive ideology. The Democrats know that their agenda completely deteriorates when confronted by a little something called the truth, which is why they work so hard to prevent people from speaking the truth. As you may have noticed, the progressive left's entire game plan is to pretty much flip the entire country upside down. Every institution that made this country great in the first place has to be torn down altogether and rebuilt in accordance with the woke agenda. Basic foundational words like man and woman have to be redefined such that no one even knows what they mean anymore, and if you speak out against it, guess what? You're going to jail. And if you don't believe me, just look at how our country operated for the last 4 years during the Biden era. It was like living in some alternate reality where everything normal and American was endlessly attacked by the radical progressives. And we all know for a fact that if they had ended up winning the 2024 election, this country would have been toast. The country that you grew up in would have become nothing more than a distant memory of the past, with everything that you know and love about America getting completely destroyed and replaced by the woke agenda. But I will say, another great thing about this Supreme Court ruling is that it perfectly reinforces President Trump's commitment to protect female athletes and to keep men out of women's sports. Really, this is just yet another radically progressive policy that the overwhelming majority of Americans don't support. And hey, if you don't believe me, take a look at this.
I think these numbers are really illuminating on this topic because I just think there's such a clear trend among the American public. So transgender female athletes in women's sports, only 18% of the country says that they should be, in fact, allowed to participate in women's sports. Compare this to the opposition. I mean, my goodness gracious, 79%. You rarely get 79% of the country to agree on anything, but they do, in fact, agree on the idea of opposing transgender female athletes in women's sports. But it's not just the here and now, Laura. It's not just the here and now. What we're actually seeing is a trend on this particular issue, and it's going in the direction of opposition. So take a look here. Okay, transgendered female athletes, and amongst those Americans who oppose them in women's sports, back in 2021, it was 62%. A majority, but, you know, not anywhere close to a ginormous majority, right? A clear majority, but not a ginormous majority. But then again, you look here in 2025, you see it at 79%. So it's not just that the majority of Americans are opposed to transgender female athletes in women's sports. It's that the opposition has become considerably larger in just the last 4 years.
So, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Right now, 79% of Americans nationwide are against allowing men to compete in women's sports, and every single year, that number is only getting bigger. As it would seem, the Democrats have decided to double down on all of these radically progressive policies that no one in America actually wants, which is exactly why their party is imploding right now. But as if their policies weren't bad enough, then they try to violate the constitutional rights and criminally punish all of their political opposition. And like I said a moment ago, Americans are just sick of it. So really, this Supreme Court ruling sends a transparently clear message across the country. The days during which the radical progressives got to silence and punish their political opposition, that's us, the conservatives, for just speaking the truth, have officially come to an end. And now that President Trump is back in the White House, common sense is back in the United States of America. And so, hey, I don't know about you guys, but me, as far as I'm concerned, this is what it looks like to finally put America first. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we wrap up, I do want to say real quick that we officially have a Morse News Twitter page as well as a Morse News Facebook page. So if you use either of those platforms, please go down below and drop a follow in order to get breaking news updates that relate to everything we talk about here in the YouTube videos. But everyone, that is going to be a wrap for today's video, so please go down below and drop a comment. Let me know what you think about all of this. Please like the video while you're down there, and like I said earlier, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a ton. Thank you all very much for tuning in today, and of course, as always, stay safe.